Hi, Bill.
Hey, Jim.
I'm gonna
Another
have,
nice day in Michigan.
pardon me.
I said another nice day in Michigan.
It was beautiful. I'm gonna have to leave around 8. How have you been?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Nothing unusual going on in my life.
Staying healthy?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Hey, where did you go in, what was it, South America?
Yeah, we flew into Santiago,
Oh,
and
wow.
then we were there a couple of days. Then we got on a cruise ship, sailed south along the Chilean coast, stopped at a few different ports, went through the Chilean fjords, and then we hit Ushuaia, which is at the bottom of the continent. But that's part of Argentina there. And then we went down to Antarctica waters. We didn't set
Wow.
on Antarctica, but we sailed in Antarctica for 2 days. It was stunningly beautiful. That's all I can say. Alaska. Have you been to Alaska?
No, no, I haven't.
It's Alaska on steroids.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just fabulous. And then we sailed from there back up to um, Argentina coast, finished the cruise in Buenos Aires, and then we were there a couple of days and then flew up to Iguazu Falls. And a little bit different temperature-wise from Antarctica because it was 97 and bright sunshine and it was a little bit toasty there, but spectacular waterfalls.
How did you happen to get on this tour? Was it I don't know, how'd you do it?
Well, it's a cruise line that we've used before. It's Azamara, 700 passengers, so it's not real big. And we've done, I don't know, 5 or 6 cruises with them, really like them. And we saw this one for Antarctica and South America, and so we kind of jumped on it because that was a place that both we wanted to see both areas. And we really liked Chile. Chile was fabulous. Argentina was nice, but we really liked Chile.
Wow.
So
How
my
long was the trip?
it was a month.
Oh my gosh.
My 50-year-old Spanish didn't do too well, but we were able to get by. And fortunately, a lot of the people there spoke English. So, or between their English and my little bit of Spanish, we were able to get by.
Oh, wow.
So it was a great trip, Bill. It was a great trip. I'll have to send you a few photos of Antarctica after I sort
Oh,
them out.
yeah.
I've got
Wow.
4,000 photos from this trip.
Oh, God.
So yeah, it was fabulous.
And that would be like the summer months south of
Yes,
the equator, right?
yes. Hmm. So it was warm in Santiago, and then as we started going down south, we could feel the temperatures cooling off. And by the time we got to Ushuaia at the bottom of the continent, um, it was rainy, but all the mountains along in the background of Ushuaia were just covered with snow, and it was stunning to see that city with the mountains in the backdrop with snow on them, and it was beautiful. But going in Antarctica was really fun. Had to come in and warm up after a couple hours out there, but um, saw lots of whales, seals, penguins, you name it.
It's funny, that made me think back to when I was teaching and had the summer months off. It never occurred. I always wanted to go down to Australia.
Hmm.
And then somewhere along the line, I realized the summer months up here would be the winter months in Australia. But I watched some Australian veterinary shows, and it always looks sunny and warm down there. So I don't know. It's probably a good thing I didn't waste my time and money trying to go to Australia. So
Australia's an interesting country. We've only seen a little bit of it. And again, it was on a cruise where you stop into some cities, but Sydney is a beautiful city. People were very nice. Sailing in the Sydney harbor was pretty spectacular because you go by the Opera House and you go underneath their big bridge, and but it was very nice what we saw. They have I forget, 8 out of 10 of the world's deadliest creatures, but fortunately we didn't see any.
and I see the other Bill has joined us. Are you up here yet, or still down there?
I am still in Florida.
Hi, Bill.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm trying to keep body and soul together, you know.
Boy.
Now I'll be down here for another month and a half.
And I see Frank. That's probably Frank Unger. He hasn't turned on his volume yet. And Norb, I see Norb has turned on his volume, but we don't see you yet, Norb. There you go.
Yeah, I made it. I got all these buttons to push.
Yeah, yeah. And I see an up down M, which is Dick Galant
Cameras.
looking down his coat.
Right. Well, I'm having some problems getting this. Oh, here we go. Maybe this.
He's standing on his head.
Yeah.
I love the zipper.
There we go.
There.
I have a general question. Most of you guys knew each other in seminary, right?
Right.
I hope we did.
I mean, the ones that come on this program. So I'm the odd one.
I know you.
I know you were there. I don't remember any of you. I know some of you were there when I was there, but
Right.
you were first year.
Right. Yeah, we were
You were there for
first
2
when
years.
you were sixth.
Yeah.
But with a
You
name
were
like
too,
yours,
Norm.
I remember
Oh,
you.
yeah, graduated in 65. Yeah, you were there 2 years. Yeah, okay. That's true.
They were all gone when I arrived, Norb.
Okay. And you are?
Jim Blanchard.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Former governor.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know.
Not too many people remember that anymore. It's been a
I
few
remember when I
years.
talked to you the first time, I asked you that, didn't I? Well, I asked if you were related. I knew you weren't the former governor.
I always had fun calling down to Michigan Department of Treasury for work matters.
You got service?
I did. I always got right through.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah,
Yes,
Frank
Frank.
Unger,
can.
yes, we can hear you,
Where
but we
you
can't
been,
see you.
Frank?
I got to figure out my little camera here isn't working too well. I'll get it. I'll
Oh.
just
I had the same problem, Frank.
huh?
I had the same problem.
What'd you do to fix it?
Hit the button right. Hit the right button.
Which one was that?
It was that iMac camera. I had a menu that I could get, but I'm just saying it. I had the problem.
If you're on a computer,
Yes, sir.
you press Alt-V, turns on your video.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
V.
Yeah, turns on your video, yeah.
Is that something you learned in Greek class or what?
Yeah.
Well, I got a nice bell sound. That's all I got. So something's not quite right. I'll
It
just
says
keep.
on mine, Frank. It says
Oh.
there's a TV camera. I have a pretty recent Mac, it says you have to click this little it's green and then green and white, and it has a an icon of a camera. It's real small. It's on top, and you're supposed to click that to get the reactions. It says, and then it has a menu of different things that the camera can do. I don't know if
Oh.
that helps.
Oh, okay.
Well, I clicked a button that says Zoom is unable to detect a camera.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
Well, I'll just carry on and I'll get in there. I can hear you guys talking anyway.
We can hear you also,
And we
Frank.
can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, one of the things that I always was curious about, when you were there, were you living in St. Henry's and going over to Aquinas, or what was the story? I had no idea what was going on at that point.
You talking for the 2 years of college?
Yeah.
Well, go back to your high school days.
High school, we had all our classes in the admin building.
Okay,
So, and the freshman year, we were in the freshman dorm. Second year, we were in the second year dorm, probably just like you were.
right.
And then junior and senior year of high school, we were over in St. Henry's
Wow.
because all of the college students had moved over to Christopher House, next to the Aquinas campus on Robinson Road.
You,
Oh, okay.
you said St. Henry's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we were
thought
in
I
St.
heard, I
Henry's
thought I heard you
junior
say
and
St.
senior
Mary's.
year.
You meant St. Henry's.
St.
Yeah, he said
Henry's.
St.
Yeah,
St.
okay.
Henry's. But when I was there, the fourth year and the first 2 years of college were at St. Henry's Hall.
Right.
And so they had more space and they could accommodate you. So that's good.
That was true from the beginning. I was there I was there the first year it opened,
Oh, okay.
and the fourth year was in St. Henry's right away. And I think the year we went there, which was my, I think, oh, I take that back. It opened the first year I was there, which was my sophomore year, but I did not go over there until fourth year,
Mhm.
senior in high, like you were just talking about.
Right.
But I think there were a couple rooms that had 2 or 3 students. I mean, 2 or 3 rooms that had 2 students. 'Cause
Really?
Yeah, because there were
Wow.
more than 66. There's 66 rooms.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I never counted them, so I didn't.
Well, I read that. I didn't count them either.
I never thought about it, but the most memorable thing that I have of St. Henry's Hall is I was walking in kind of the main corridor, and it was like in right around early afternoon, and Monsignor Moran got on the what do you call it, the speaker, and announced that Kennedy had been assassinated.
Oh. Mhm.
Remember exactly where I was. I mean, it was really tragic, but that's my biggest memory of St. Henry's is that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember exactly where I was too. I was student teaching at Catholic Central.
Craig St. Martin,
Yes, I'm
Good.
here.
good to see you. Now tell us, I don't recognize your name except for being on the list of people we send the newsletter out to. So who are you?
I'm in the class of 69. So some of the gentlemen were prefects when I was a freshman.
Okay.
And so I graduated the high school portion in 67
Oh, okay.
and then graduated college in 69. I was in with Brucker, Father Brucker, and Mark Mitchell, and also Dennis Wagner. He was in the
Oh, yeah.
class. And some of you might be more familiar with Jerry Greiner. He was on the work committee. I think, did you work with him, Bill? Jerry Greiner?
I I recognize the name from somewhere, but I can't.
He was from,
Yeah.
he was up, let's say, north of Sparta,
Scottsville.
up there in that area. And I try to remember the name. It's a small town.
Scottsville.
Say again?
Scottsville.
Yeah, that's it. You're correct. I got it. I remember
And
that.
His brother Dale had been in.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
seminary
Gail,
as well.
Gail was with Norm, wasn't he? Or
He wasn't,
you're
he wasn't
younger.
he wasn't my class, but he was pretty close. I remember him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And who are you? I didn't catch your name.
Craig, St. Martin.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
And
Correct.
I was from Hastings, just south of Grand Rapids there.
Right.
And
Okay.
I had come up with, there was actually four of us. Barry Kennedy came up, and then after that, Bill Ellis came in the class behind us, and Doug Hart. And I have been very close. Jerry Stein
Yeah.
lived very close to my mother-in-law.
Oh,
And so
okay.
Oh.
we've been out golfing and fishing and doing different things, but playing a lot of bridge with Jerry. He was a big bridge player. So I got to play with him many times.
Mhm.
So, Craig, hi, I'm Dick Galant. Just to introduce myself, I was
Uh-huh.
in the what's a noted class of only 3 that graduated.
Uh-huh.
That class currently only 2 of us are alive, I think, or that I know of. I mean, no, there's some more, but
Oh,
So what class is that?
say
What-
again.
What class?
Ray Griffith was in our class.
Yeah, I remember. Okay. Griffin.
And Bill, I was in the class with your brother Bob.
Oh my
Right.
gosh.
And Ray Griffith, his brother was in seminary before.
Charlie.
Charlie was there. Yep.
Yeah, he was a year ahead of me, and he was an infirmarian. Really nice guy. He had black
Yep.
hair.
I was an infirmarian as well.
Oh, okay. So was I. But Sister
It was a very
Christopher
proud moment when they introduced the Christopher House for Sister Christopher there, and she taught me many things.
Common sense is one.
That was one of
It's
them.
funny,
Yep.
Craig. My brother left after, I don't know whether he left at Thanksgiving or he lasted through the first semester, but in retrospect, he had told me several times that he had no idea what life was going to be like for him over there. I mean, he was shocked that they didn't have hot water in the the restrooms, cleanup areas on the next to the dorms. I mean, that was just, I guess I don't know the rest of you guys. I just kind of went along with it. Well, what the heck.
Sounds like the U.S. Army. We used to have to run to a temporary area to take showers in Hawaii in the middle of nowhere.
So he left right after. It could have been November. It could have been January that he left and went back to a normal world.
Had running water, hot running water.
Right.
Yeah.
Craig, this is Jim Blanchard. I was at St. Joe's when you were in college. I was started in '67. I remember you.
Okay.
You're kind of like the Hulk. You're a great big guy to a little ninth grader.
There you go. Yeah, it was a good time. I was trying to remember how many of our guys are you mentioned that still alive. Jerry Greiner died. Larry Lemansky was in our class. He's died. Trying to remember. I was going to dig out our little holy card that had all of our names listed when we
Mhm.
graduated, and see how many of them are still around. Well, Carl Shangraw and Elmer
yeah.
Bunnick
Oh,
joined
right,
our
yeah.
class. They got a holdover deal, and so actually it was a good deal for both of them. The Bunnick ended up becoming an accountant, I believe, out west, and Shangraw is a big time surveyor and is involved with Ferris and also up in Traverse City, and had a surveying company of his own. Carl did. Oh,
I
he
remember.
did quite well. John Lang was in our class. He ended up being a dentist up in Sparta.
Wow.
And also Mike Sponyevich was a teacher up in Sparta. And he did the IT stuff for all of the schools up in Sparta. And he was also the golf coach up there. And if you ever run into him, don't put any money on yourself because he's a scratch golfer.
You know, when you mentioned Carl Shangraw,
Uh-huh.
I can remember back in our first year, that would have been in the December of 1960.
Yes.
There was a Carl Shangraw that I think was in the Mikado. And I saw his name show up, or the name show up in some of the documents that we've downloaded. But those, and you mentioned a Carl Shangraw, and I just somehow, for the life of me, I can't imagine how there could be two people with the same name.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's probably the same. He married a Jenny Wood that was at Aquinas too. And he went up to Ferris and got his surveying degree and everything up there after I think he finished at Aquinas. And
Was he
so,
a land surveyor or a surveyor of,
yeah,
poles?
civil engineer,
Oh, okay. Okay.
land surveying.
Got it.
Yep.
So it sounds like there were two separate.
I think there might have, and that's a really unusual name.
Might have been. Well, he had a brother named Bill Shangraw that was younger.
That was
Oh.
Phil.
And he was
That was Phil.
Phil. That's what it was. Phil. Yes.
Where were they from? St.
Bill
Francis?
Shangraw.
Where were they from?
Blessed Sacrament.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Thanks.
think Blessed Sacrament. Yeah. But John Lang, I think, had an older brother, Joe, that had gone to the seminary, but it may have just been for a short period of time. I don't know if he was there for very long. But I've kept up with John Lang, and I've kept up here and there with oh gosh, great big tall guy that was with the fire department.
Dennis.
Just died. Dennis, yes. And Dennis was a great imitator of the rector. He would just do a great job during the presentations and stuff that we had, mocking the faculty.
Dennis Morrow.
Dennis Morrow.
Oh my gosh.
Dennis, he just
He was
died
great at it.
Yeah.
a few years ago.
2
Yeah,
or 3 years now.
yeah. Well, you're
Yeah.
talking about people with the same name.
Yeah.
Do you know Paul Malinowski, Father Paul? Anybody?
Yes.
I know the
knew him.
Malinowskis, or somehow I knew of the name.
Paul Malinowski. He told me one time there was another Paul Malinowski in the seminary,
Yeah.
which surprised me.
Of course, our class had two Michael McKennas.
Yeah,
Really?
MG and me.
Yeah,
MG and
Michael
me.
E,
I remember.
Michael G.
Right.
Interesting.
Wow.
I'm curious, just for the fun of it. How many graduated in your class? Mine was 61 and we had 21.
The class of 66 ended up with, I think, 16. Does that
Oh.
sound familiar with you guys? The
19,
only one there is
Oh, Bill.
Bill Gebhard.
19 plus Jim Hannick.
Oh, right, yeah.
Okay.
However you
And that's-
want to call it. They put up 19 pictures and Jim didn't make the cut.
Oh, and that's second year of college.
Right.
Yeah. When did it? Okay. Anybody else? Any other class?
What about you, Jim Blanchard? How-
We started freshman year with like 31, and I think we graduated from St. Joe's, the high school part, 17.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
And then from Christopher House, we might have graduated maybe 8 or 10. I don't recall.
Okay. And then how many were ordained?
3. 2
Okay.
that started at St. Joe's, and then we picked up one in college,
Okay.
Rock Badgerill.
Yeah.
Wayne Wheeler and Charlie Hall were from our original class.
And of our 21, 6 were ordained. And only 2 stayed in the priesthood till death.
Mhm.
What is that? Who are they, Norm?
The 2 that Jim Splatt and Ron Schneider.
Ron Schneider's deceased.
They were okay. And was Jim Gardner?
No, he was
he
2 years
behind you?
me. Yes,
Huh?
2 years behind.
He was a singer. He had a really good voice.
Oh yeah, I forgot that, but yeah.
I mean, he did the leads in the Mikado, I think, or something. I mean, he was.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he looked a little different because he looked, as I remember, his face was really kind of thin, but I mean, he was in that picture, it was a little more full. I mean, it's a nice picture.
Mhm.
It was sad that that he's passed.
Mhm.
I don't know how many of you guys realized that he had been suspended from the Gaylord Diocese.
Really?
Yeah.
What
Who
for?
was
Yeah.
suspended, Bill?
Pardon?
Who was
It's-
suspended?
Jim Gardner.
Oh,
He was 2 years ahead of us. So he would have been I think he was in the class of 63 or something like
Yeah,
that.
63.
Right. And he got suspended for the whole sexual abuse scandal
really?
that,
Oh, really?
yeah, it was there.
Hmm.
Well, that would explain it. wouldn't it?
Right. Well, I mean, the same thing happened though. What I was getting to was McKenna was
Oh, okay.
and I don't know all of the
Yeah.
procedures that they followed but Mike McKenna was in Sacred Heart Church in Muskegon, and I think he might have been either the pastor or the assistant pastor there when he ran afoul of the law, and then he was relieved of his position, although he was still apparently allowed to celebrate Mass or the Eucharist. So it was one of those kind of strange situations. It was kind of sad to hear him as well. So, and I've been after the last few months, the Attorney General in Michigan has been issuing the reports on sexual abuse, and they've covered Marquette, Gaylord and Kalamazoo diocese. They haven't yet released a report on Grand Rapids or on Detroit.
Mhm.
So I'm guessing that they kind of come along in batches. So, almost any time those other dioceses could be, their reports could show up. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with the priests of Detroit Archdiocese, but I recognize several names from Gaylord. Oh, Kalamazoo is the other one that has been released. So I recognize several names from Kalamazoo, Gaylord diocese. So it's kind of sad when you look at names that you remember from those classes. But,
Yeah. Saginaw has not been released yet, has it?
pardon?
Has Saginaw been released?
No.
I didn't think so.
Right.
Hmm.
So,
So you're
well,
getting
listen,
a new, so
pardon?
Bill, you're getting a new archbishop in Detroit.
right. It's kind of interesting. I remember back when we were one of the earlier alumni sessions that we were talking about. I guess the general thinking around here was that Bergeron never made it to Cardinal because Cardinal Maida is still alive.
He is?
And yeah, he's that 92 or 93, something like that. And so
I
in
never
the
knew
group
that.
here, we were mentioning his name, and somebody had said, well, it's unlikely that he was ever going to be a named Cardinal, even and I never understood, that at all. But anyway, yes, Cardinal Maida is still alive. He's in his low to mid 90s. Sounds like a weather report.
Well, they don't even talk about him though. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
So
I
even
heard that
Free
Bergeron
Press?
was not. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying I haven't. Who's the guy that was the financial wizard that went to Rome?
Yaka.
Shaka.
Okay.
Yeah, but he was around the time of Maida, wasn't he? Or when he was still a cardinal or whatever. Because he kind of stayed in Rome, I think. I don't think he's
Yeah.
alive.
Right. Once he went to Rome, he did not come back. So what I heard, Vigneron was not declared a cardinal because of Pope Francis. Pope Francis is naming different people cardinals than the standard. I mean, it was automatic for years that Detroit would have a cardinal, and St. Louis and Boston and New York and D.C. and L.A. and San Francisco. But Pope Francis is naming cardinals of other cities, like Newark, New Jersey. I'm trying to think where others.
Newark, New Jersey. Wow. That's like calling Ypsilanti.
but I just assumed that was because you don't have two cardinals from the same
Right.
diocese.
However, in contrast to that, Cardinal Wilton Gregory is still alive, and Cardinal McElroy is now Archbishop of D.C.
He appointed him there before Trump got in office.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going back when there was some discussion in the group and followed up with Father Coughlin. Remember him from World War the 30s and the
1930s, yeah.
right. And the big deal was, I think it was Bishop Gallagher had recruited him from Windsor, and then would not do anything to rein him in during the 30s and the 40s with all his, ultra near fascist, and he was definitely anti-Semitic.
Right.
And the one of the things that I saw in there was that uh, Bishop Gallagher would not be named a cardinal as long as he refused to rein in Father Coughlin.
Oh,
And so that, it went on for a while until I think it was Mooney was appointed the next Cardinal of Detroit. I lost track of something, who was who at that point. I mean, I had no connections with the diocese down there at that time. So, anyway, that's what I had picked up or saw in my, analysis of what was going on in the diocese in Detroit and Michigan during the days of the 30s and the 40s with Coughlin.
yeah.
The thing that always struck me, though, was that, and again, this is totally unfamiliar with the hierarchy. Other bishops in Michigan never said anything about Coughlin. At least I couldn't see any records in my searches that anybody else in Michigan had spoken up about him. Now, they might have done so quietly, or because Coughlin didn't fall within their jurisdiction, they wouldn't, criticize a priest in somebody else's diocese. But anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting too. I thought, oh, geez, how come these other guys, or bishops, never said anything about Coughlin? But that's the church politics, for what it is. Hey, Frank, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I can't get my video to work, but I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay. Feel free to chime in anytime.
Voice from heaven.
Not very well versed as to, who was Archbishop or, Cardinal when or anything like that. So this is interesting to me, when I have something, I'll kick in there, but I'm here.
Okay. Let's go over to Dick Galant. I think the last couple sessions you had mentioned talking about how our lives were shaped by our life in the seminary, and I had put in a little comment, for better or for worse. So you want to kind of take it over from here? And
Yeah, I think that I was thinking that I was thinking about my own life, and the time when I was in the seminary was 7 years, and then from there I went to the University of Michigan when it was at the height of its anti-war and everything else. So interacting with groups and things that within about 3 years. I got my degree. Actually, I got 2 degrees and taught a half a year in Detroit at St. Agatha's. And then I went into the Army and this was right in the middle of, I think it's 69. I went in there and I went through basic training. Then I went to officers training, and I was within a week of being commissioned as an artillery officer, and I turned it down because I would have, when you join the service, even if you're drafted, you have a 6-year contract. I don't know if you knew that, and you have so many years of active duty, and then when you get taken off the active duty, you still have inactive duty. That's why you go to Camp Grayling or something like that over the 6 years. So in other words, if you have 3 years, you still have 3 years more. And anyways, I thought about the experiences I had in those an incredible set of transitions that that I went through, and it was all by me. I mean, I was by myself. I didn't get married until I was 42. So, but I was reflecting on the people I had encountered, and strangely, what surprised me is that in the Army, I felt that there was a little bit more camaraderie in the group. I don't know what it was attributed to. Maybe people knew this was life and death, and you could go to war. And then think about the routine. Going to Michigan, I had a terrible time with my academics the first year. And I thought, well, I did all this studying and this and that, and I had to learn how to turn it around, and kind of get used to Michigan's way of teaching and all kinds, different things like that to get acclimated. And I mean, I wasn't a big party goer and any of that kind of stuff, but as you get on in life and you do things, how you treat people. I was in position as a dean. How do you interact with people in situations like that? Since you didn't go through a public school or high school, or at least I didn't, and how people perceived you, this and that. And I just, but I think that the seminary was a good character formation. For instance, like it didn't bother me. We had all these silent things, like every night you never talked to anybody, or and you were restricted to that. You had certain.
Wireless caller.
Good. How are you?
Sorry. Anyways, it's just how you
I'm
kind
gonna
of
call you.
had
Just
to
hold on a
adapt to
second.
all
I'll
that,
disconnect from
and
the
what the
Zoom
training
meeting.
did.
Okay. No, hold on. I'm leaving.
Okay, sorry.
See you, Norb.
Yeah.
Yep,
See ya.
bye.
I don't know if I'm boring you, but I just I don't know if you've reflected on that ever, or what, going through all that transition and.
Well,
Okay.
Well, finish up, Dick.
So,
Yeah.
well, I'm just, I mean, I don't regret any decisions I've made. But I just wondered about how you act with others, in the positions you had. I never got really active in the church in the sense of getting on committees, or so. I have a little bit, but I don't know. It doesn't interest me that much, most of it. It's not that I don't, I like now, and I made a commitment to this. I try to go to mass every day. I'm not trying to say that I'm dissatisfied with where I went or what I did, but it was just, how did that experience really impact you?
Hey, Dick, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Um, how has your prayer life been affected from being in the seminary?
I think it's a good question, and I think that in a certain way I've become more prayerful. And we're not I'll use the word, it shouldn't be this, scheduled or forced to go to things like that. But like I said, I go to mass every day and I use a missal. And I do think, though, that the teaching of the religion overall, and what I had in grade school and at the seminary, was really very, very good. Understanding what the church is trying to do, that kind of stuff. That why it's important and why they do it. And the other thing is that, and I told Frank Unger this, the thing that surprised me, it's not a gripe in a way, but the diocese, all the time that I gave, they never said thank you. It's just surprising to me because they build a big thing that when you try to get you there and kind of getting acclimated after you leave. Because I thought about, how am I supposed to behave after an experience that I had?
My wife made a comment. I was about 25 when we got married. She was about 20. And she said, do you realize how socially retarded you are?
Yeah.
And, and I fully admit that I was very clumsy in social situations, but I've worked very, very, very diligently at trying to work on that. And but the education that I got was superior to any classmates that I had back in Hastings that went to regular school, regular public school. And that benefited me very much in the workplace. I went into sales and marketing, and it benefited me tremendously having a good mathematics, a good. I think the speech class was probably the best thing that I had going, and I would always do comedy skits and things like that for speech class, and were involved in things like that, and it benefited me. But I wish that I had gone into writing for something like Saturday Night Live or something, because I would have enjoyed that tremendously. But I had a wife that I have a wife that for 50 years now that I think has really helped me out. You said in your prayer life, because we've done a lot of missionary trips. We go to Central America, Guatemala in particular. She's been down there, gosh, already probably 100 times. And I've been able to go with her probably a dozen times. But some of those times were some of the most reflective. And I tell people, I says, I can go there and readjust my compass. Because what's so important to us here in the United States is, it doesn't mean a lot to them. If you chicken eyes, hey, that's not a good thing in Guatemala. Here, we kill millions of them. But I think that her having set up a couple of nonprofit organizations, she had kids come in from all over the world when we lived in Michigan, and she had open heart surgeries that were able to do. They were high risk situations, and she worked with University of Michigan, and she worked with Butterworth, and each took 20 patients. And it's still, I think, in some semblance there, it was Heal the Children that she started there, and it's still going on, getting kids flown in. We had kids from Iraq, we had kids from South America, and they just couldn't get it done where they were. And she was able to figure out how to get those 40 kids a year to get their hearts fixed.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
It's just curious because I'll ask Bill, but it applies to what you just said about heart. Do you know Mike Donnelly?
Yes.
He's been on. Okay. Well, Mike left the seminary. He came here to Michigan, and he was what do you call it? Peace in the draft.
Conscientious objector.
Objector, thanks. And
Mhm.
he objected, and the judge somehow he ended up working at the University of Michigan Hart as an administrator. He's retired now. He's at St. Francis. And I
Ah.
just wanted to know if you ran into him, because he came to, I mean, I saw him the other day. You usually see him in Mass and that. But he was from Holland,
Huh.
and
No, I
kind of tall guy.
never had an opportunity, but that was a route that I took. I was a conscientious objector, and I spent 2 years at a Christian center
Wow.
down in Indiana, and we had probably the least amount of money that I've ever made in my life, and the most amount of fun that I've ever had in my life. I was working with senior citizens. We were moving them from milk trucks and shanties into some government housing facilities, give them some better facilities. And we'd play cards a lot. And it was just a way of getting them to know each other and begin to create a community.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a daycare center there
Wow.
for the community. And it was a lot of working poor. And so they had to have someplace to take their kids. We had a sliding scale and everything. And then we opened an optical clinic and a dental clinic there because we found that
In 2 years?
kids were not doing good at school. Yeah, 2 years
2
we were
years?
there. And
You did
yeah.
all that?
it was good. We had a youth group. I could remember I'd go out and try and beat them up pretty good in basketball, some of the teenagers, and then we'd go in and I'd do some macrame. And I was trying to blow their mind a little bit, and it worked because they would ask me, and we got into some pretty deep conversations, and it was the best time. But I think the first year we got paid $35 a month, and the second year we got paid $45. We got a raise, and so it ended up being we got a place to stay. We were bunked up in a room behind the used clothing store, and then we had a chow every night. We had supper, and so it was and that was a lot of prayer time, because I was praying that some of these kids would graduate from high school, and I would follow them. And we got one kid graduated from high school. It was a very poor area. I had a program in what they called the box car. We had a railroad car. It was put out in the middle of about 5 acres, and we had gardens there. And so I taught the kids how to raise some vegetables, and we'd cook up a cabbage when it got old, big enough, and green beans and tomatoes. And it was probably the fresh fruits or fresh vegetables that they had in their diet. But it was a good time. It was a very good time. But I was the first CO from Perry County, and I can remember the draft board when I went in to meet with them. And my father knew a lot of people in Perry County down in Hastings. And I remember when I went down, he went into St. Rose and prayed. And when I got up from my seat after an hour and a half of grilling, there was a couple of pools of water where I had sweat on the floor. But I'd done a lot of prayer about that. And I was fortunate that they granted me a CO, and I spent my 2 years, had to go down and get the physical, and they tried to snag me and say, gosh, you got a good education. Maybe you should be a, in the yeah, you could be a clerk or you could do whatever you want to do. And I said, no, I've got a different route. And
Yeah.
they left me alone, and I spent a couple years, and that was good.
Yeah.
But
It probably changed your life.
I appreciate
Yeah.
it. It did. It did. It's interesting, though. The folks in the military, I've got a very good friend that was a colonel in Vietnam, and he was with Special Forces, and we
Whoa.
golfed together a bunch. Yeah, when we were in Houston, and he'd done, I think, 2 or 3 tours. But he says, this is my, he'd introduced me on the golf course. He says, this is my CO friend. The other guys in the military and everything go, what's that? And he'd explain to him what I had done, you know. And I've got a good, I've got a good friend here at church, and he's a retired general, and we
Yes.
go and do a lot of things
Wow.
together. And
Wow.
so it's interesting how people relate to you,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Right.
But most of it is you did service to your country, and I think that's a good thing. I think more young people should do some type of a service. Maybe it's in the Forest Service, or it's maybe in hospitals or something. But to take a couple years of contemplation and figure out what this is all about, and
Mhm.
see if what you want to do is truly what's in your heart.
I wonder if that would
So
have,
I think it's a good thing.
I don't disagree with you, but I also think that even if you were in the seminary,
Oh,
if you
yeah.
did some things that were more related to, priestly work, that you'd have a better idea of what was going on a little bit, like doing something which you did that would, that's one really good example, but so but to really spend a year, now you were kind of in quotes forced to, but still,
That was part of the deal.
yeah. I mean, even in the army, you would meet so many different type of people,
Oh, mhm.
and they came from all over. You didn't have any choice either. So
Yeah.
Greg, where do you live now?
I live in Panama City Beach here in Florida.
oh, you're
And
in Florida?
yeah,
Oh, I
out
thought
at
you were in
the,
Michigan.
yeah, up in the Panama. Well, work took me. I went from Grand Rapids to Houston. We lived in Houston and Sugar Land for about 20 years. I had the South Central states, and then for a couple of years, I had to go out and fix some things in California. And as soon as they were fixed, I asked the vice president. I said, I'd like to get out of here. It was it was it was a nice experience. I had the most beautiful gardens that I've ever grown in California, Southern California. But I had to share the whole area with 20 million other people. I tell people 20 million people in 4 counties,
Wow.
and that's the population for the state of Texas. And it to put it into perspective, I but you what I called it was they grow into a cocoon. I had neighbors that I waved to when I come back from the office and things, and I'd never got a wave back. There were neighbors that would disappear on the weekends,
Hmm.
and I would never see them during the week because they were busy with work. And I said that they were cocooning. They would wrap a cocoon around their family, and they didn't do much. And so the socialization that we had out there was through my kids, playing soccer and basketball and sports. And that was how we got to meet other people, was through sports. And we were fortunate. Fortunate we couldn't have children, but we adopted 4 kids. My oldest son is a teacher from India, Calcutta, India. And I have 2 children from Bangladesh Both of them are disabled, and I attribute it to the first few years. They were there for a couple of years, and the
You mean in
malnutrition that they
Bangladesh?
had
In Bangladesh?
in Bangladesh.
The
Yeah,
first 2
and
years.
both of them have low IQ, but they both work. My son is a dishwasher in a big restaurant, and my daughter works in daycare.
Wow.
And then I have another daughter from Chile, and she works for Microsoft. And so they're all gainfully employed, but two of them live with us still and probably will live with us for a while. But I was very fortunate. The kids that they weren't, God picked them for us, and
Yeah.
they're just delightful kids.
Wow.
I enjoy each one of them. It's kind of my story.
Wow.
It's impressive.
Traveling, and they got to see all of the United States. We've been through all 50 states with them, and we've gone to Central America. Yeah, we had a good time. I've had the most enjoyable life. I really have.
One thing that is a comment from doing these Zoom meetings is I noticed that many of you got into like social work after they left the seminary. It seemed to me a common pattern of somehow doing, and my reaction is it's actually what you were trained for. I mean, you were being trained as a cleric, but I mean they did things like you're talking about, or and I think of Frank Marfia. Didn't he work for the government and social services? And Stosh, he did stuff in there. Bill, didn't you go to the Peace Corps, Gebhard?
4 years.
Yeah. I mean, it was that's something that's really impressed me. What you did after you left.
Well, Dick, you and I have lunch every couple of months or something, and that's something I said about myself was that I'm the oddball. I ended up in industry, and what was interesting, I came from a very isolated environment. I never saw you guys during the summer or anything, and basically all I did was work, and then I played baseball. That was it. But the one thing the seminary taught me, and I loved interpreting the language, oddly enough, was Greek.
Yeah.
I seem to have the love of just looking at a bunch of words and tearing them apart one by one until it made sense. It appealed to me. And as an industrial accountant in a multi-divisional company, I was able to solve a lot of problems for a lot of people by just being able to tear stuff apart. And that's one thing the seminary did teach you, the detailed instruction you got.
Yeah.
Kind of bored into your head, and you the education was good. They may not have been perfect instructors in every way, but each one of them taught you the subject, so you knew it at the end of it. But that's kind of what I got out of it. What's odd is I went into the seminary expecting to participate in different functions. Like someone just recently said here at this meeting, like participating in some parish activities or something like that. And I didn't have any of that.
Right.
It was only, I did some of that at St. Mary's in Baltimore, but
right. They let us out a little bit. Yeah.
You could do as much as you wanted to in a way there. But what I found is when I came back to the parishes, I ended up teaching high school CCD and some of these other things that I never thought I would do. And I wouldn't teach it either. Unless I had one thing. I had an older pastor. He's in his 80s. Is St. Mary's downtown, Muskegon. And I says, you're going to have to let me treat these young people like they're young adults. I says, if you try the Baltimore Catechism thing again, you're going to lose. And I was able to keep all of them for the entire year. And I got them to express their opinions, even if it didn't necessarily agree with church doctrine. He said, Frank, I used to get a little alarmed by you giving them that kind of freedom and then all of a sudden you would just gently come in and just say, have you considered, what the church really intends for you when it says these things, and everything. I didn't carry the hatchet after everybody. You do that to young people and you lose them.
Yeah.
But I was rather successful at it. But that all came from, not from the seminary so much as myself. And I can't say that entirely either, because the seminary has so much. I was there for 8 years, and you can't deny how much that affect how you grew up and who you are, and the things you studied and how those things, what you studied, like breaking Greek down to the last syllable, how it can make you a success in business or anything else. I found in church ministries, I got involved in a lot of things, but 2 of them was making things. I know how to build. I built my own house with my own 2 hands. And quite oddly enough, I sang in the church choir and stuff, but I was never a solo singer, and I probably cantor mass 2 or 3 times a month. And I never would have suspected I would have ever done that when I was a seminary, So it's interesting how it affects you and you don't even realize it. And you have to realize that somewhere in the back of your head, the seminary makes you what you are.
Yeah.
And you pretty much have to accept it,
I want to make a comment, Frank, that to share with you all. I had a chance to go, believe it or not, it was like a 6-month vacation in a sense, but I had a chance to go to Turkey and Italy, 3 months each. And on that, in quotes, tour, I was at military bases. And so I was able to finagle my way to get to Greece. I got to Athens. And this is, the planes and everything. And I'm not paying for any of this. This is even more incredible. And I got to the Acropolis, and I sat on the Parthenon, and I sat down on the steps and I cried, because everything they had taught, and Frank talks about regarding Greek, and I did decently well in Greek, but it was like everything they said was real. It just, what they taught us, like, it used to be like this and all that. And it just all came together, and it was so emotional to be sitting in the Parthenon. I never in my life I figured I'd ever have an opportunity to do that. And I did. So that was an achievement for me.
I would have loved to go there. And people say, if you went to Europe, where would you go if you went to like Italy? And I says, I'd go to Rome. And because my love of languages, I would have just loved to go to the Forum, because that's where Cicero was. And you went, Dick. And oddly enough, where a lot of what's funny is that the study of those languages and some of their philosophy didn't affect me so much as I don't even know how to say it. It's just the brilliance that those two empires had. Yeah, regardless if you agreed with their philosophy or anything else like that, they just stood out there, you know.
Right.
The brilliance was there. But as far as being inspired or ruled by that, I less so than many other people would be. But the learning, that classical learning, really stretches your mind and allows you to work and do things for people beyond what they expected, you know. And I like Craig down here. I come out of the military after immediately going in, leaving the seminary, you know. And I came from a town of like 400 people. So two brothers. So I had zero social life. And walking into like even a normal party for me was a very interesting experience. And I've never done that. And so I'll just leave it there rather than get carried away with this too much. But the seminary was influential for me, but in ways you wouldn't normally expect, you know. Okay.
Guys, I've enjoyed the conversation, but I need to leave you. So
Yeah, I expect that. Yeah, thanks, Jim.
we'll catch you next month.
Okay. Take care.
Thank
Probably
you.
May.
See you.
May?
Hey,
I'm just looking.
Bye-bye.
We do it every 2 months. It'll be like in May, right?
Sounds. Nothing so fair as a day in May? I don't know.
Ah,
No, that's fine.
I guess I can toss my little bit in here. I don't know. In retrospect, this is a lot of self-analysis. I sort of think that the seminary life worked for me because it had structure to it.
It's true.
And I mean, that sort of fit my just life in general. And probably that last year when things were really in upheaval at St. Joe's is what kind of soured me on going any further. I remember going in while I was trying to ponder what the heck I was going to do next. I remember after I made my decision, I went in and, or while I was making my decision, I met with, at that time, Bishop Rose, later, I mean, at that time, Father Rose.
Yeah.
And then I went, I decided, well, and I think I remember telling him, this just wasn't at all what I expected priestly life to be like. The politics of what was going on in those last couple of years is really what kind of soured me on the whether this was going to be what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I mean, there were the conservatives, and there were more progressives, and it was just backbiting, to and fro, and the venom was becoming, especially from people like Shaw, were just really souring me on going forward with this as what I wanted to do with my life. And so I went in and I talked to Monsignor Martin, and I said, I pretty
Monsignor
much
Martin?
decided. Yeah.
Really?
Not Monsignor. Moran. I'm sorry. I would have liked to talk to Martin. Would have been probably an interesting conversation.
I'm sorry.
But anyway, I said, this isn't it looks like this is not what I ever thought of priestly life and the priestly mission to be like, sitting there and fighting over, back and forth. And and I see Albert is coming in. And so that's when I decided to leave. Now, when I left, I moved down to Detroit. So I guess I was thinking I'll have a complete break in the past and move down into where no man had gone before, at least from the west side of the state. I didn't know anybody in Detroit except my grandparents. I just sort of struck out on my own. I have to admit that my decision to go to Wayne State was partly because they had the neatest catalog that was in the St. Henry's Library. There's Al. Wayne State at that time was sort of growing. It was an urban university that was expanding left and right. And so I thought, well, anyway, that they had an interesting description of the history curriculum. I thought, well, I like history. So I went to Wayne State. The funny thing is, I had to submit an application ahead of time and get a transcript from Mitch. Remember Mitch?
Yeah.
So somebody along the line must have had a pretty good idea that I was looking elsewhere. So I submitted my application along with the transcript and I get the letter back saying, you've been accepted. Check here if you want to learn about our financial aid. I thought, well, sure. So I checked on that, and then I had to fill out this, financial need thing or whatever. And they got back to me and said, we'll offer you a scholarship for 2 years and loans for two more years. So I thought, geez, this is a pretty good deal. And so I didn't even bother checking any other places, and I got accepted and went down to Wayne State and signed up and got my financial aid. At that time, it was I forget how many. It was like $104 for 3 classes or 4 classes, 3 times a year. And then it was $104. Can you imagine going any place to a university where you get the cost is only $104 per course? And then I got the same amount of money in the form of a student loan. Those guys who went into the military, I don't know if you remember the national student loans, student defense loans, they were called. And the deal was if you went in and then taught for each year that you taught, you'd get a certain percentage of your tuition or your loan, was marked off. So I thought, well, heck, I always was interested in teaching, so I'll just go in and become a teacher for a few years and get out of fulfill my requirements for the loan payback. And so that's how I ended up in teaching. It's on sale here at the L supermarkets. I can hear somebody in the background there. And they have really nice fresh. But anyway, that was really how I got into the general human services arena, community service arena. The school that I ended up with in Detroit was one of the most God-forbidden parts of the city. It was the school that I went to was Southeastern High School, and I learned later that it was scheduled to be torn down in like 67 or 68, somewhere around in there. But they kept it open because there was a big influx of families coming in from the South. A lot of kids from our families from Appalachia in particular were moving into Detroit at that particular time. So they kept that school open. But that experience was, I stayed there for about 9 years. And I saw stuff go from bad to worse. And it was just very disappointing because I always kind of believed, the more effort you put into something, you ought to see at least that amount in just general improvement. The more you put in, the more you see at the end.
Lord.
And it would, year after year, it just became more and more futile. The total chaos in the Detroit public schools at that time was just absolute. It was falling apart. And so after 9 years, I was a mess. They didn't even have the term burnout at that time, but I was a classic burnout. I was coming up with ulcers, and my doctor said, "You got to get out of that place. It's going to kill you." And so, in the final year of my teaching, I had been such a good teacher that I hardly ever missed school. Seminary days, you didn't miss anything. And so I had racked up, 7 or 8.5 years of sick time. And in those, that time, you could save your unused sick time from year to year.
Yeah.
And so in the final year, my doctor had given me Valium to, holy mackerel, that stuff was, that really put you out. But at any rate, I got out my calendar and I counted up all the number of sick days I had, and I went back to the end of that school year and decided I had enough to cover me if I were to become sick in February of 967, somewhere right in there. And so I just kept counting up the days until I could actually quit or become sick. And I had to walk away from that job. It was literally just killing me. And then for a couple of years, I got interested in community organizing. Again, the whole process of making the community a little bit better. I got involved with neighborhood projects in Detroit neighborhoods. And that kind of brought me into the whole trying to raise money for community improvement projects. And then I stumbled across, at some point, my name had come up as a good community organizer kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And so I got into an age, or how did that go about? Somehow, I was doing contract work for different agencies, a few months here, a few months there. And my name came up when they were looking for somebody who could kind of organize different agencies in Detroit to deal with the whole issue of people who were being discharged from the mental hospital system. I don't know if you guys remember that whole thing where they decided that keeping mentally retarded people or people with what were then called developmental disabilities, mm-hmm. instead of keeping them in the Michigan hospital system, they were being discharged into the community. And the agencies that had to deal with them were just not ready to deal with people. They had traditionally dealt with people coming out of hospitals as being the frail elderly. And so the whole homemaker, home health, and visiting nurse system based on helping the frail elderly get their basic needs taken care of. And this was an initiative that was started from the National Council on, I think of National Council on Homemaker Home Health Aid Agencies, that they thought maybe there's a better way of preparing these agencies to deal with not just the mentally or the physically challenged, but people with mental retardation or autism was included in developmental disability at that time, and cerebral palsy.
Who knows? Yeah.
And so I put together a training system for to deal with how these aides, home health aides, would be better equipped to help this new set of people who they were seeing. And that led me to, after I spent a couple of years on putting together that effort, and by the way, it was interesting. We found out that Medicaid was supposed to pay for the homemaker home health aides, but had not. The state of Michigan was among those that had decided that they weren't going to pay for home health aid services for people with developmental disabilities. They would pay for it for low income, again, the classic were frail elderly, but they weren't going to pay for it for people with other disabilities. So we got the state of Michigan at least to own up to the fact that they had to pay for these services. And of course, that meant that the Visiting Nurses Association, they could now charge the state for that kind of services that they were providing. So out of that, it turned out that one of the agencies I was dealing with
Seminary
knew
guys.
somebody at
I forgot.
Brighton Hospital. There was a guy who had just been named the new director of Brighton Hospital. That was the substance abuse treatment center out in Brighton.
Right.
And he was looking for a fundraiser, community marketing kind of guy. And so I ended up going to work for them, and I stayed there for 9 years until the whole, again, that was when the healthcare system started falling apart. The health payment organizations like Blue Cross and so on decided that they were not going to pay for, they were only going to pay for limited services to individuals with substance abuse problems. And so unfortunately, the Brighton Hospital had just launched a big new program to help teens with alcohol issues, alcohol problems and drug abuse problems, and had gone out, built a whole new wing on the Brighton Hospital. And then they found out that the carpet had been pulled out from underneath them, and they ran into problems with trying to pay for the bonds that went into the construction, and they started laying off people left and right. And so after 9 years tends to be my length of stay at any agency. So I left Brighton Hospital and did some consulting work around, and then it turns out, at that point, my training or inclinations were in fundraising and grant writing and marketing, things like that. And it turns out I got to be, technology was the other thing that was coming on the scene right at that point. So I was known among many people in the fundraising community in Detroit as being a technology knowledgeable kind of guy. And so my next job, which ended up turning to be my final paying job was with an organization called Operation Able of Michigan. And their focus was on helping older workers adjust to the new economy and get the training and the skills that they needed in the computer age. And an older person at that time, according to the federal law, was anybody 45 and up. You can imagine that. They were finding that labor departments having a really hard time dealing with what do you do with somebody who is like 50 years of age, but has never worked in agencies that required him to work on a computer. So Operation Able put together a massive training program that addressed that particular need. We spent a lot of effort in, we set up computer labs to train people in the basics of, how to turn the thing on, and then the word processing and things like that. And I stayed there for another 9 years until the government support for those kind of programs was pulled out from underneath agencies that were providing those services. And so that was the last full-time job that I had. And after that, I did a lot of consulting work with the agency in community development and just basically helping raise money and raise awareness of what these different agencies were doing. So when you look at getting back to some of the things that others have said, my work and interest had been in service to the community. And I tend, maybe it's just I don't know if it was by choice, but I ended up with some of the hardest kinds of issues to deal with: poverty, substance abuse, job skills, people on the bottom rungs of the societies and ladders. And so I guess when you look back at that, would I have done this without the seminary? Who knows? But somebody mentioned, it was like Frank Unger that said, my experience at the seminary sort of prepared me for all of this. But I guess it's always been the whole issue of turmoil in the jobs that I ended up involved with. Did it help me prepare for those kind of things? It's hard to say. I have to say, though, one of the things, I think it was Frank that mentioned this too, was the whole social interpersonal skills. That was something that none of us were really prepared for. And so it took me quite a few years to really become accustomed to dealing with, especially women. I never had a whole lot of friends in Detroit until back, the mid 70s and forward. So the social isolationism in the seminary was something that it fit me for many years. And the life in the seminary was socially isolated. I know that there were guys that had to sneak off the grounds to go to an ice cream parlor. Guys, we were like, not hermits, but in the monasteries, just totally cut off from anything that resembled the real world and social interaction. And so in that sense, it sort of I carried over that style of living for years afterwards. So I don't know. In terms of my own religious inclinations, I'd have to say that I have not attended Catholic services except for the occasional funeral and things like that. Actually, my wife was raised a Lutheran, and I was more comfortable in Lutheran, at least her congregations, than any Catholic ones. And again, you get back to the chaos in the Catholic Church today is just very discouraging. I mean, I'm very supportive of what Pope Francis has been doing, but then you look at the people that he has as the Pope. You got cardinals that are complaining and undermining him, just kind of refusing to go along with what he wants to do. So I've just been very, very discouraged about the way the Catholic Church exists today. And I kind of think, oh, geez, what's going to happen next after Francis is gone? The last of the socially conscious popes is going to be gone. Are we going to be dealing with the Elon Musk types at the Catholic Church level again?
Mhm.
I keep fingers crossed and keep hoping for the better, but I get really upset. In fact, my wife and I are so upset that we just have turned off watching the national news anymore. It just has become. I mean, we would collect between the two of us. We would just get upset every time those stories would come on. You think, oh my God, what the hell more can go wrong? And so we decided between the two of us that we would just shut off at the national news. We can read about the stuff and the idiotic stuff that is coming out of government today, and there doesn't seem to be anything that we can do about it except maybe post some things every now and then. But it's really kind of discouraging. And you look back to my life in 1965 and 66, very similar to that. So fingers crossed, and we'll see what happens. That's
One
my
thing,
story.
One thing, Bill, you can't move to Canada.
Yeah.
I'd like to add to what you said. And about 5 years ago, I had a thought, amazing thing in itself, but I sat and I said, things changed. The seminary was relevant, and then it wasn't. Okay. And it happened very quickly, 2-3 years, boom. And I thought about like the Second World War, and society changed so much. People got married a little earlier, maybe marriages that shouldn't have, but in the heat of the time and the passion and everything they did. But when the GIs came home after the war, society changed. People changed the way they raised their kids. It changed in the way they, how much maturity they wanted them to have, and that type of thing. And a lot of the major institutions never saw it. The first year of the baby boom was 1946. If you take the age of 13 and you add it to that, what do you get? You get 59. 1959. And that's about the time things were still stable at the seminary, but by the time, and that's when I joined, but like 6 years later, things were getting unstable. And after my first year in St. Mary's in Baltimore, things started really to unravel. And I think what happened, part of the problems that we have is society changed, but we didn't. The church didn't, and I don't think it ever saw it coming. I mean, and you won't either, because the classes go along, and all of a sudden you get this baby boom generation that's grown up with different expectations of them, hit the seminary, different ways of thinking, different approaches, different views on religion, everything, and all of a sudden, and in a lot of ways, things become irrelevant. It's not irrelevant, but from their way of thinking, it might be. And I think that had quite an influence because the seminary system just fell apart in a very short period of time. And I think it has to do with the part of a good deal of the changes due to the social changes due to the big war in the 40s, you know, the aftermath of that and how people changed because of that war. Just an observation.
Mhm.
Bill, to add to one thing that you had, and that was your consultation with Monsignor Moran. And I had a similar situation in that I went in and we had a long discussion, and I was trying to figure out, I wanted to go to St. Meinrad's down in Indiana, and that was put the kibosh on that right away. But he told me, and I tell people it was the wisest information or counsel that I've ever had. He said, do you realize this is the Catholic Church? And it isn't going to change for you. And I took that wise counsel and I packed it up and went out to Grand Valley and got a degree. And so I want to thank him for that. But there's also a movie. I don't know if any of you have seen it yet. Conclave.
Yeah.
Haven't seen it.
Yes, I've seen it.
Good flick. It's a good flick. And I think that that's one that shows you a lot of the politics of the church. And it also shows you the personalities that can develop in the church hierarchy. And it's a good movie. It's well done. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. And it's on television. So, hey.
You have a pregnant pause.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know, Al, you came to the table a little late this evening. But we were talking about, Dick Galant had brought up that question about how seminary life had, for better or for worse, has affected our lives after the life in the seminary and what we're doing these days and things like that. So that was what all this conversation was about. So if there's anything you want to add. Oh, by the way, I got to tell you, never heard of New Buffalo before, but in the last couple of days, I've seen on Facebook photos of the shoreline there at not Lake Buffalo, New Buffalo.
Right.
Yeah, and it's really very kind of interesting. There was a 360-degree photo of the lakefront there that was really very impressive. May move over there and be your neighbor.
Uh-huh. Well, it's as far as you can go in Michigan and still not be in Indiana.
Right.
I'm right off exit 1, which is the beginning of I-94 in Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
And some of you are at the other end of it. But talking about the seminary.
We're at the Canadian end.
Yeah. Yeah. Take the Ambassador Bridge or the tunnel, right?
Right.
Smuggle your way on over. Don't tell them you're trying to go over there just for a minute or two, or you have to get out of your car. Anyway, what I was going to say was I was in the seminary yet back in 1971 when I took a leave of absence because more family things than anything else. But that was right when Kalamazoo Diocese was being created, as several other ones were. And of course, we're talking about the conclave and things like that. I could see the wheels turning in the Catholic Church in Michigan, where the bishops knew which parishes they were going to give up to the Kalamazoo Diocese. So they made sure that their problem children were in those parishes. They moved the priests around to get rid of the unwanted to the Kalamazoo Diocese and yanked the ones out of those parishes that they wanted to keep for, like Grand Rapids or wherever that was. So during my year off, I decided that I might not go back to the seminary either, because too much politics. And of course, that lives on.
Alan, it just occurred to me too. Another thing that I have found very discouraging about, at least again, limited to my experiences here in Detroit, church after church has closed. I mean, they've just tried to sell them. Mostly, if they couldn't sell them, they just walked away from them and let them rot. And in all of my experience in Detroit, the Catholic Church has been the last one to the table. I just have not seen a whole lot of interest in addressing a lot of the problems that these parishes are located in. So that's what has kind of also soured me on the Catholic Church. It's just like, the neighborhood that I taught in and that I lived in for many years was a pit. And I saw nothing in all my teaching days at Southeastern. I saw nothing indicating that the parishes right around there were involved in dealing with the tons of social problems that were in that area. And I would go to I moved up into the 6 Mile McNichols area, which is right where U of T is located, and went to Jesu Parish, which is the Jesuit parish there. And it always struck me, after Sunday Mass, everybody just got in their car and drove home somewhere and just sort of abandoned the community until they came back the following Sunday. And I was like, God, I mean, how can you do that? I mean, that really was another issue that I have struggled to deal with. I mean, even you look today at the issues that are facing the country as a whole. I've seen different Protestant leaders address some of these issues, talking about how the things that are being done are so much against Christian values. I've seen things from the Episcopal Church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church, but very tepid or very confusing messages coming out of the Catholic bishops in this country. And so that is another thing that has really kind of discouraged me about what we're seeing now. Instead
I
of
think the thing with, excuse me, Bill, but just to amend that, the Catholic Church almost says nothing about the immigrants, the Hispanics. That's stunning to me. What they like Holland, and it was in Grand Rapids Diocese. You're familiar, we're all familiar with that. They say nothing. And to just get, like, the other day, yesterday, ICE took a guy that was delivering his boy from who has autism. He's been in the United States 30 years. He has a business. He has 2 other kids and a wife. And they take him away. That's nuts. I mean, the Hispanic integration of the influence on the Catholic Church, and you don't say nothing or anything.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Well, here's the other thing, and part of this is politics and practicalities. Well, I don't even want to say practicalities, the stuff that the church deals with every day, just running the institution. But it's like the church needs a shot in the arm. Remember that we are the mystical body of Christ. Remember that?
Yep.
Remember that?
Yeah, that was a big theme.
And when's the last time we've ever heard anyone from the church that says this is who we are and this is what we need to do? The church doesn't do any of that. I don't know how to explain it. I've run into that even with, I'm active in pro-life. And I say, we're never going to win the battle politically. And we kind of did, but then Michigan ended up with abortion bills and rights and stuff that are worse than what was there before. You don't win these battles, moral battles, with laws. You win them with the morality and the belief of the people. And unless the church marshals that, these big issues, won't be there. Just suppose if we had 50, 60 million people who really believe that they belong to the body of Christ, okay? That Christ came every week to us during the Mass, and what our job for salvation for the earth and everything else is, it would be so much different. And I just fault the church for, like you say, making politics and everything there. It's like the church has kind of lost its way. I mean, just think what would Jesus Christ do if he were here today and Bill, and he ran into the situation of the abandonment of Detroit and that type of thing, his judgment on that, and I think that's a place where the church is missing it. They got to get away from politics, both internal and external. And if they can make the people somehow believe that they are the people of God united in a single faith, and that's hard to do, we're going to have these problems, and the church may become less and less relevant as time goes on. Anyway, that's just my thought on it.
So, anything in conclusion you want to say, Dick?
No, I appreciate all your thoughts and for each of you, and hopefully tomorrow will be bright as we move on. So just don't put money in the stock market right now.
Hey, looking forward, if we follow our every other month plans, our next virtual get together would be if we follow the Monday. First Monday in May is Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo. Are we going to celebrate?
5/5/25.
Got it.
If I could ask you, gentlemen, to remember in your prayers, my younger brother, just signed himself into hospice, and he's dying of pancreatic cancer. And if you could just remember Mitch, my brother Mitch, appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Will do.
Thank
We'll remember him.
Thank you.
Okay. Does Cinco de Mayo sound okay with people at this point? Or
Easy
any
day
other
to
date?
remember. Yeah.
Yeah,
Buying?
right.
Are you buying? Cervezas. Cervezas.
Yeah, if I
Can't
don't
get
show
that
up, I'm probably
anymore.
celebrating. If I don't show up, I'm probably celebrating.
Yeah. Footnote, I think it's interesting how liquor sales are
Oh,
one of the biggest things that are driving this whole
oh boy.
tariff issue. Oh
Yeah,
my
because
God.
they're putting a tax on aluminum. So now you're going to have to pay more money for beer. Let me give you a quick fact. The other night, Michigan and Michigan State played basketball at Chrysler Arena. And Michigan sells beer. That night, it was a full house, so there's about 12,000 people there.
Yeah.
They made $60,000 that night. I know because I know the guy that does the beer and told me. So I just thought of at the big house, Chrysler is 1/10 the size of the big house. That means that they make what? $600,000 a game on beer?
Well, that wouldn't surprise me.
That's a lot of money. That's all. It's just a thought.
Something to set a perspective to this whole meeting, right? There you go.
Yeah. Cinco de Mayo. Adios.
Okay.
Adios. Adios.
Okay, nice seeing you guys.
All right.
To hear your voices.
Yes. Bye-bye.